As a therapist, the number one thing that I hear constantly is, do you get what you need from the people around you? And if not, why not? That's what boundary means to me, is that how is it that you treat yourself, and then how is it then that you allow other people to treat you? You have to be in a space where something happens and you're pushed into a space, and it's in that moment you have a choice of, life isn't working the plan that I had, the things that I'm doing, what's going on. One of the questions I tend to ask is, why now? Why is this so important to you right now?
So true.
And when people dive in and they say, well, this, you can feel that they're ready. They're ready to want to go within, and you have to be ready to want to look within. Ultimately, we're all navigating life, but we navigate from the relationship that we hold with ourselves. If I feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like I'm not worthy, I will behave in that way in the world around me.
This is quite, I always feel like, should I share this on like live podcast? But I'm going to. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A Millennial Mind. If you haven't already, please, can you do me a massive favor and press the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening or watching to this. Only 4% of you that watch and listen to this podcast are actually following it. And the bigger the show gets, the bigger the guests get, and the bigger the experience gets too. Thank you so much for all of your support so far. Let's get into the episode. Lalitaa.
Hiya.
Welcome to Millennial Mind.
Thank you. And
thank you for
having
travelling
me.
all the way from Birmingham today.
Not that far.
Well, when the trains are cancelled and it's a Saturday and there's weekend traffic, it is quite far. So I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
But for people who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Lalitaa, and by training, I've just trained as a psychologist. But behind that, I think my biggest mission in life is to allow people to feel good in themselves, to allow them to just reconnect, not feel anxious, not have the self-doubt, not have the overthinking, and just feel at peace with who they are. So that's my biggest sort of mission in life.
And how did you kind of figure that out, and what was your journey in getting there?
When people ask me this question, I always just sit back and I think, how did I actually get here? And I'm just like, there's no story, there's no journey. I think it's just something within me has always guided me into a space where I know I've always been a people person. I know that I've always been an empath. I know that I've always picked up on people's emotions, feelings. I've always had that connection.
Yeah.
And somehow I've ended up in this field. I remember having to choose my subjects at A-level, and there was a taster session that we went to for psychology. And I went to it, and the teacher, she was talking about dolphins, and she said, dolphins, they sleep one brain hemisphere at a time, otherwise they'll drown. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fascinating. And because of that, I chose psychology. So that ended up taking me down sort of the career path I did. And I actually started with computer science and psychology at university. I found out I really did not connect with computer science. I don't know why I chose.
Actually, aren't they?
Very, very different. I think at the time I had my options open. I thought I liked both of them, and then I just stopped computer science, and then I restarted in just psychology because I just knew that was the right thing to do at the time. But there's no real path of how I've ended up here. I think just there's been experiences that have happened, reflection moments, and then choices, and that's how I've ended up here. And I can't imagine myself being anywhere else.
That's amazing. But, as a psychologist, a lot of people don't understand, the role of one. So what is the role of a psychologist?
There's so many different roles. I think it's about how you are as a psychologist and the approach that you take. So I'm very holistic in the approach that I take. I don't just want someone to fit in a box and say, right, okay, these are your symptoms. This is what you're presenting as. You are now depressed, and this is what you need to do. And as a result of that, you need to have CBT therapy, or you need to have medication, or you need to do this. I think for me, it's about understanding the person's journey and understanding what has gone on in their life, what has been their path to end up in a space that they're in right now, where they may be presenting with certain symptoms, what's going on for them. And if you can understand that and take them down that journey to really help them make sense of it, it allows them to take their power back and really feel grounded in who they are.
Yeah.
Or have that sense of peace without worrying, overthinking, all of these different things that may have happened as a result of things that have gone on. So as a psychologist, that's what I do. So everyone else has their own view and their own version. But that's sort of my approach of psychology. Is I understand the human sort of subconscious, understand their people's beliefs, their values, and really go deep diving into what their beliefs are and how those beliefs are sort of manifesting into their everyday life. So if someone has gone through things and they feel like they're not good enough, they're not worthy, how does that play out in their everyday life, where they may be at work, they now have this belief that I'm not good enough, and as a result they're trying to seek that validation. And because they're trying to seek that validation, they might be the yes person at work. So they're like, yep, I'll take that. And someone's like, oh, I can't do this. Can you do this? Yeah, I'll do that. And then at home, they're up until midnight struggling to try and get things done because they feel like I need to do this, because they feel that they're not worthy, they're not good enough, and that they're not important. They're trying to seek that validation. And it's like, no, where is your worth? Where's your self-respect? Where's, your worth? So that's where I'm just like, I want to wake people up to just the power that they have and their worth and their potential, and not that they're limiting themselves in any way because of the beliefs that they hold from the experiences that they've been through.
There's a couple of things you mentioned there. One is limiting beliefs, and then the other thing I think is setting boundaries. And knowing your self-worth as well. So all those three things are kind of interlinked. And I believe, everyone has limiting beliefs around themselves. We all do. I have several around myself. And often it stops me from taking action. So really quickly, just I know this is much deeper, but really
Let's
quickly.
go. I'm ready.
How does somebody get rid of a limiting belief? Because first you need to acknowledge that you have one, right? So first of all, how do you acknowledge what your limiting belief is? And then how do you tackle that?
So when we talk about limiting beliefs, it's a belief that you have that you may not be good enough. So it keeps you in your comfort zone. So what I mean by that is that you are feeling that if I come out of this comfort zone because I'm not good enough, I don't want to feel the feeling of rejection or abandonment or something. There's a painful feeling that's going to happen if I leave here. So people may have a belief that I'm not good enough. It doesn't mean that that's the only belief they have. There's other beliefs that you have, but that's the louder one. So it's not saying how do I get rid of it, because there's a reason, there's an experience, there's something that's gone on in your life that's created that belief because of the assumption that you may have had. So say if we give an example of, I don't know, Carl. Carl has... he's grown up in a household where he is a very sensitive individual. And when he is upset, he may start crying. And mom and dad now have said, look, boys don't cry, you shouldn't cry, stop crying, and I'll give you this instead. So now he may have learned that it's not okay for me to show this sensitivity because I'm not being held in the way that I need to be. And it's not blaming mom and dad. It's not saying, right, mom and dad were not good enough as parents. It's trying to understand Carl's journey through life. So he may now have learned that I'm not good enough. So as a result, he's put that sensitivity to the back of him. And he's presenting as, yep, I'm sort of like this person who's really tough and I can take anything. But actually there's a sensitivity side, but he's not showing that because he feels that's not accepted. So he now might carry on through life feeling that I need to give people what they want, because if I don't, then I'm not going to be accepted. And as humans, we want this sense of belonging. That's a human need that we have. We want this sense of belonging, especially when we go back and look at our attachment figures. They are very powerful. Research has shown how powerful they can influence our lives in so many different ways. So if we think of Carl, then he now has a belief that I'm not good enough because I'm too sensitive, I'm too much. And as a result, he's showing what he feels he needs to show. So how does he change that? How does he change this belief that I'm too much, I'm not good enough? Because as he progresses in life, that's the way he's presenting in all aspects of life, with his friends, with career. And he's not being his authentic self because he fears what's going to happen if I show that side again. So in order to get into that space, it's really just trying to reflect on, okay, am I really staying in this comfort space? Am I really staying in this space because I worry and I fear what people are going to be thinking of me? Am I being true to myself in who I am because I feel like I am sensitive, I want to get upset, I want to do these things, but I'm stopping myself because of the worry that you have of how people or what people are going to be thinking of you. So it's really doing deep inner work to try and make sense of, are you really staying in fear? And when we think of fear, fear is trying to protect you, is trying to keep you safe.
Yes. Because
now when Carl was showing the sensitive side, he felt rejected. He felt like he wasn't good enough. He felt that he was too much. Those are really difficult painful things to feel, rather than feeling the validation of, oh, okay, if I stop crying, mom and dad will accept me. So now he's learned that I don't want to feel these emotions. So this is the way the brain tries to protect us. And I do that because ultimately it's trying to look after us, but it's irrational in how it's trying to protect us, because it keeps us in a space and it doesn't allow us then to go out, because we're worried. But if I do show this side, then I'm going to feel that feeling of, look at their face, they didn't like that. They're thinking this of me. They're thinking this. And then you go deeper and deeper into your own stories that you're creating in your head, thinking, they think I'm too much. They think this. Why are they being like this?
Yeah.
And it's where the sensitivity comes in. So, yeah.
So what you're describing there essentially though is you have to have a lot of self-awareness to recognize that, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who go about their day-to-day lives not diving that deep. Does that make sense? Like what you've just described is he's recognized Carl, this superficial person, by the way, this is not a patient of yours.
Yeah.
But this person has recognized that, okay, am I staying outside of my comfort zone? Am I sensitive? But a lot of people, this is years and years and years of conditioning. So these are subconscious limiting beliefs that are impacting our temper, our mood, our reactions. You have to have a lot of self-awareness to understand that deeper journey though. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that because it's very easy to avoid problems and incredibly hard to face them.
Yep.
So how does that kind of journey begin for a lot of people?
I'm smiling when you're talking there, because for me, I think it's, you have to be in a space where something happens. Something happens and you're pushed into a space, because otherwise you're just going along your life and it's like, yeah, everything's fine. And then something happens. And it's in that moment, you have a choice of self-reflection, because you're just like, life isn't working the plan that I had, the things that I'm doing, what's going on, and you're smiling, what's going on here, what's happening. And then that's when you have to really go inwards to be like, what's going on here? And sometimes people won't go inwards there until something else happens or something else happens. So for me, I think it's about, you have to be ready to want to look within, and something has gone on in your life, and it has to be a big thing. It could just be that something has gone on at work, or someone's treated you in a different way, and as a result it's made you reflect on life in a very different way. And that's where then you go inwards to try and make sense of, well, hang on, what is this about for me? What's going on for me? Because even in the therapy space, people may come into therapy, and I've had it where people come into therapy and they may have 1-2 sessions and it's just they're not ready. And it's it's overwhelming. There's a lot going on, and they may go back and think, actually, I'm not ready to do this. Whereas you have people that come in, and one of the questions I tend to ask is, why now? Why now? Why is this so important to you right now?
So true.
And when people dive in and they say, well, this, it just, you can feel that they're ready. They're ready to want to go within, and you're holding that space for them. You're holding a space to allow them to feel safe, allow them to really dive deep within. And they have been in situations where they may not have had a space like that, where they have felt safe enough with you. So it's a real privilege to make sure that you've got this space where they feel okay. And if you notice that something's not okay or something's going on, you also have the power to be able to say, look, what's going on here? Whereas in the real world, we don't do this. So if you ask your friends, oh, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. But you know that they're not fine, but you just like, okay, maybe.
It's too uncomfortable. Yeah, you don't want to avoid it. You know, I completely agree with you, because I think a lot of the time, well, from my own experience, when I went to therapy, it was when I had enough. I'd had enough to speaking to my friends. I'd had enough speaking to my family, and I could feel that I was draining their energy talking about the same thing over and over again. And the justification I needed to make my decision was, I need to speak to an external person and then see what they tell me. But of course, the therapist is never going to tell you to make a decision. However, they unlock something within yourself that allows you to then feel safe and allows you to then feel strong in making a decision that you already know you need to make.
Yeah.
And so I found, you're completely right, that at a point where something has happened and you're thinking, now what? What do I do?
Yeah.
That's when you almost go to therapy. But something you touched upon there, which I think is really powerful, is this idea around self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, you know, I learned about this kind of idea when I was studying, and I remember being so fascinated by it because it's so obvious how many of us have self-fulfilling prophecies about ourselves. And they can come about in so many forms, because if you're nervous about going to a party and you're thinking, that person didn't really want to invite me, but I'm just going to go, and I'm not cool enough, or I'm not good enough to be here. And you go there and the host says hello, and then someone else comes in and they just cut you off and they go and say hello. Automatically, your self-fulfilling prophecy will say, I knew they didn't want me to come. They didn't want me here. Why did I come? I'm not good enough to be here. However, the reality of the situation is, they said hello to you and they're the host of the party. And so they have to greet all of the guests. And so when a new person comes in, they have to say hello.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to distinguish that as somebody who feels insecure. And we all have our own insecurities. So how do you advise people to zoom out of those situations and look at things holistically?
So the first thing is, for me, awareness. Awareness of, these are my limiting beliefs that I have. These are the limiting beliefs that I hold. And as you mentioned, we all have them. There's all situations. There's days where you do have bad days. You wake up and you think, oh, why is this happening? Why is this that? And you bring yourself back out, because by challenging these thoughts, by challenging, and it's understanding. So if you know, okay, today's been a bad day. I know that there's this that has happened in my day right now. This is why I'm feeling like this. So you've got some sort of understanding now of why you're feeling this way. So if you're feeling a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more sensitive than you normally are, and you know you're going to go to this party, it's just being aware of that.
Yeah.
So then when you're there and you notice that, why did they look at me like that? Or why did they just say that? Or why is this? You've got these thoughts now. You already know that, oh, I don't really feel. Listen to your energy, listen to what's going on, listen to how you're feeling, and really work on, okay, why do I feel this about this person? So I feel like this person doesn't really want to invite me. What's my relationship there? And it's not that they're doing something, it's that they're something that they, or how they're behaving is bringing something up for you. So if you have a space to journal, reflect, talk to another friend that you feel safe talking to, and try and understand that, what is it about this person and the way that they're behaving that's bringing something up? So you're taking accountability of what's going on for you, rather than saying, they're making me feel like this.
Yes.
They don't want me there. It's you owning what's going on in my inner world. And if you really work on that inner world and make sense of it, it makes you stronger. And you then now know how to navigate your sensitivity towards the world around you, because you're understanding, this person's doing this. I'm sensitive about this. So how am I now going to navigate? Do I then fall into, I'm not going to bother talking now, I'm not going to bother doing this? Or are you going to sit with it and challenge it and work with it and talk to that sensitivity and make friends with the sensitivity? Because it's allowing you to, it's guiding you to connect with the world around you.
So true, because, you know, even in that example, if you feel in that moment that the host has gone away and they've cut you off, what's your reaction going to be? You're going to be closed. You're going to feel frustrated.
Yeah.
And then the host naturally is not going to gravitate towards you. And so that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's coming true. So it's really actually that blew my mind when I heard about it, because I remember thinking, that is so true. So many of us do that subconsciously, and we don't know. And having that awareness is really key. And that's why reflection for me is the greatest life skill I ever learned a few years ago, because I believe it really allows you to tap into your emotions, your reactions, and see what triggers you. Now, I always say this as well, you know, if you're seeing someone do well and you're feeling jealous, tap into that emotion and realize, okay, and accept, I'm feeling jealous.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's worse to think, well, I don't want that anyway. I don't care. They're not good enough. Because all you're then doing is not taking power of the situation.
Yeah.
You hating on someone is never going to change their success. But you owning the fact that you feel jealous and then saying to yourself, okay, I feel jealous. Why? Because I want these things. Okay, so how can I get them?
But
Take
it's also
back that power.
I wonder if it's like people, they struggle with accepting I'm jealous. Like they really struggle to own this a feeling that feels quite negative. So people will say,
exactly,
I'm not jealous, I'm not this, I'm not sensitive, I'm not like that. And
people
I'm like,
are so defensive about it. Yeah.
So it's like, what's going on for you to admit and take? Is it about the shame? Is it around how people are going to view you? Is it about this perfectionist sort of view that you need to give to the world to show that you are good enough and look at me, I'm this and I'm this and this, which is what people can do. So it's trying to also understand that and really working on how is it that you then entertain or you become in the world when you're feeling certain things around your friends, around people. What's going on for you? It's fascinating.
Honestly, I think it is fascinating. I wish I did psychology or something like that.
Still, it's never too late.
No, but you know, it's something you touched on there is around shame, and I think a lot of people can kind of turn inwards when they're feeling shameful, or they're feeling upset, or they're feeling embarrassed. And it's no shock horror when I say this, that, you know, loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics across the world, not just in the UK, but in the world. And, you know, you increase the risk of death by 26%.
Yeah.
And it was affecting 2.6 million people in 2022. And in 2023, it was 3.3 million. All these people are saying they feel lonely. So 3.3 million people now say they're feeling lonely.
Yeah.
Which is horrendous. How do we tackle that? What advice do you give for people that are feeling lonely? Because a lot of people message me and say as well, I'm all by myself. I don't have anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
My friends don't want to listen. I don't speak to my family. I can't afford therapy. So what do I do?
Yeah. So when I hear around loneliness, for me, it's a disconnection from the people that you want to connect with. It's this deep connection. It's this deep desire that you want to connect with someone in a way. And often people will have surface level people and they'll keep people there because they feel like there's people there. But I think this is about going inwards as well and really sitting with your loneliness and trying to understand what is it that, what are your human needs? What is it that gives you some sort of connection with someone? Because for one person it might be that, okay, I want to be able to talk about my emotions and talk about things, whereas someone else might be like, no, I just want to go out for a drink and just chill out and relax. And so I think it's about really going inwards, understanding what it is and asking yourself, the people around you, do you get what you need from the people around you? And if not, why not? And how are you now going to, is there any way that you can now start going to new places, meet new people? And when I say or suggest this in therapy to people, people will be like, yeah, but no one wants to meet new people. I'm at that age. And
exactly.
No, and it's like, that's a limiting belief that's stopping you.
Oh, really?
From going. Yeah. Like there's so many people out there that want to meet new people and they'll go on Eventbrite. They'll want to just connect with new people, doing different things. So you can go to like a pottery class, you can go to yoga, and people do want to meet new people there. Like people will just go to a coffee shop because they want to break from work-life balance and they're like, I just need to go and sit in a coffee shop. And you can feel like sometimes when I'm sitting in a coffee shop, I can feel that someone wants to talk because of the way that they're trying to sort of like engage, and you're just like, okay, you don't know what's going on for someone. You don't know what their story is. So it's never too late to meet new friends. It's never too late to connect with new people. And if you hold that, again, it becomes that sort of like labeling theory where you're like, yeah, but people don't want to meet new people. So you're out in a social setting and you're like, yeah, but people don't want to meet new people. So you literally
closed.
have these like sort of rose tinted glasses on where you're just like, but no one wants to be my friend. No one wants to be my friend. And it's like, it's stopping you from meeting new people, which is what you want. So when we think of loneliness, it is about going inwards. It's not just holding on to anyone who's around you. It's really going inwards, making sense of what your needs are in people, how you want to connect with people, what connection means to you, because it means something different to everyone. And then trying to understand, how do I get this? How do I get this in the life? Because not in the life, but in life, because there's so many opportunities out there of ways of meeting new people.
It's funny you say that, because I was going to ask you that. You know, a lot of people talk around when they get older, they let go of friends.
Yeah.
Because, you know, their priorities change, they change as people. But actually finding new people that align with you, a lot of people ask me, okay, when I talk around how important it is to have a good circle around you and how important it is to have the right people to feed that positive voice.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, well, I don't have any positive people around me, so how do I meet new people? It's impossible.
Yeah.
But you've just recognized that that's a limiting belief. I never thought about it that way, which is so powerful. But, you know, a lot of the time when people speak around loneliness, it is to do with relationships.
Yeah.
Either they feel lonely in a relationship or they feel lonely because they've just broken up with someone. And, you know, now, you know, the older you get, people see it as another limiting belief. It's harder to meet people.
Is it?
I don't know. I mean, this is what I mean. It's a limiting belief, right? Because there's loads of people that can meet people above 40, 50, 60, whenever you want. But like you've just said, it is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how would somebody tackle that first move? Because essentially, let's say I've broken up with someone and let's just say I'm 35 and I've broken up with someone and I'm feeling, okay, I'm 35 now. How am I going to meet someone? Because as a woman, I'm going to want to meet somebody. What if they want to have children? So what am I going to do?
But look, when you're saying that, in my head, it's like, right, there's all these like, what ifs, what if. And that can feel like it can become a block, because it becomes, that's too much. It's too much energy. I've got all this going on. Like, I don't want to give my energy there. And sometimes, like, I've spoken to people in spaces, in therapy, out of therapy, where people are like, oh, but I don't know if this is the right person for me, but I'm going to stay here anyway, because I feel like the dating game is really like, it's too much energy. Or it's like, oh, but I know that these friends, I know that they're not good for me, but where am I going to meet new friends? So people stay in comfort. They stay where they feel safe. But it's also, I wonder if it's about energy management. So it's like, when you start thinking, what if, you then create these scenarios that, how am I going to meet someone? I don't know. There's nothing there. What about this? And what about this? And then we end up putting ourselves off, because we're just like, that's too much. I'll just stay here. It's easier here. And it's like, but is it really easier there? And what is it that you really want out of life? So it's really having a little word with yourself, a sit down moment, I call it, where you have a little sit down moment and you say, right, what is it that you actually want? What is it that you're aiming for? And is this really fulfilling? And also, with our interpersonal relationships, when you're heading into self-awareness and you grow in self-awareness, your relationships are already formed. So when you start developing self-awareness, you may feel that I want to be more vulnerable, but because the dynamics of that relationship may already be formed, you may struggle because you worry about, I can't be that though with that person. I've never had that. I've always been the therapist, or I've always been the one who's taken on everyone's problem. How am I going to talk about what's going on for me? So it's also about trying to, again, break down that sort of block where you think, hang on, I've got these friends around me. How is it that I can go deeper with them? And maybe I test that. Maybe I ask or I say something about me and start sharing more about me. But if you've never done that in them dynamics, it can feel uncomfortable. But it's not saying that uncomfortableness doesn't mean that you can't go deep with them friends around you. So it's like, it's starting to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to feel safe, to feel grounded within yourself, and being okay to share things that you feel comfortable sharing.
But it's all around communication, right? And a lot of people struggle with that. I mean, I communicate my feelings a bit too much. I think I'm an over communicator. But there are people who will say, how do I have that conversation? How do I, with my friend for 15 years, and you know, when you're talking about relationships, it's easy to always focus on romantic.
Yeah.
But you've just touched on interpersonal relationships, which are really important. And like you just said, as you're growing and you're changing, how would someone approach a conversation with someone who they've been best friends with for 15 years? Let's just talk about two men in this example, because someone has told me this. They feel uncomfortable around sharing their feelings with their friend, where they've never had this relationship before, and one of the men is on a self-development journey and the other isn't. How would they go about that?
So I think it's about, first of all, asking yourself, there's two men, one's trying to understand themselves more on deep dive. If the other person's not available emotionally because they're not on that journey, you can't force that person either. So if you can start having conversations, and you can say, so imagine it's me and you now, two men here, we're having a conversation, and I'm like, oh, guess what, I've learned this about myself, and I've understood this. If I see that you're blocked off, I can also ask rather than assuming you're not interested, you're not bothered, you know what, when I'm talking about this, does this interest you? Does this feel like it's something that you're interested in? So you can ask the question, why is it that we have to like sit and think, oh God, they're not interested, and I'm assuming things in my head. Why can't I not ask the question in a loving, caring way, saying, hang on, do you find this interesting? Shall I carry on, or shall I just not? Like, is it something that you're interested in? So I'm just clarifying with you where we're at and what's going on.
And again, self-fulfilling prophecy. If you go into the conversation thinking he's absolutely not interested, I've never had this relationship with him, he's never going to be open to me. Let's say, for example, he's like staring at a fly, or I don't know, staring at something. You're going to think, he doesn't like it, I'm never going to speak to him about it again. But he could just be distracted with a problem of his own. Yeah. So it's really powerful, actually. I think the theme underneath all of it is that limiting belief that we have, it almost manifests itself into life. Yeah. And if we don't address it, we're never able to solve it.
Yeah. And also, like, in that situation, it might be that it's too much for that person. They're not ready to face their shadows or what's going on within themselves. And it's not then you thinking they're not interested in me. It's you respecting where they're at in their, like, on their journey. So they may not be ready to want to delve in, and you're all excited because, you know, like, oh my God, this and this has changed for me, and this, and you're excited, you want to take them with you. But this is where you have to honor where they are at, and honor the boundary of, I can't force them to want to come with me. And there is a sadness with that. There's a feeling of, but you look at how amazing this is. Like, this is so beautiful. What are you doing? But you need to also just be like, okay, I can't force them. I can show them. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink the water.
Boundaries are a topic that have kind of weaved its way through this whole podcast. And it's difficult to set boundaries because you feel uncomfortable to tell someone something doesn't work for you when it works for them, or vice versa. How do you set boundaries?
Boundaries is, when we think of boundaries, it's all about, for me, the relationship that you have with yourself. So if you are someone who is, for example, someone who's always available, so no matter what, you will be available. People learn you're available. And where's the respect that people will get from you? And you might think, well, I'm someone who likes to give anyway. I like to be available. I like to support people. I like to help people. But then when you want something, or when then they're calling you when you're busy, you can then start to feel resentful and feel really frustrated. Like, why do they not understand that I'm busy? Or why this? And again, it's a story that you're telling yourself, but you haven't told them that I'm doing this or I'm doing this. So they don't know. So for them, they've always seen the relationship as every time I knock, you open the door. Every time I knock, you open the door. So they learn. You're smiling again. I'm like, oh, what's going on there? But every time they knock, it's like, okay, what is it that they are learning, or how do they learn to treat you? So that's what boundary means to me, is that how is it that you treat yourself, and then how is it then that you allow other people to treat you? So if, for example, you are feeling guilty because someone's knocking on your door, and you are like, oh, I've got this to do, I've got this to do, I've got this to do. Now you're feeling guilty. It's about, again, how is it that you regulate the guilt? What is the guilt saying? So it's trying to make friends with the guilt, rather than thinking, I better just do it, and it doesn't matter, I'll just stay awake till 12 and I'll do this and I'll do this, to try and fit everything in. Because where is it that, how are you helping yourself? How are you regulating your guilt? How are you growing as an individual? Because all you're doing is helping them to help your guilt. Does that make sense?
It does, but asking for a friend and not for me.
Yeah.
How do you regulate guilt? I feel it all the time.
You feel guilt all the time?
All the time.
Okay.
If I set a boundary,
yeah.
And I say this about boundaries, no one is a mind reader when it comes to boundaries, and no one has the power to read your mind, but everyone has the power to communicate. And so when you communicate something, you've let the other person know. However, sometimes that other person feels like you're being unreasonable. And I'll give you an example. This isn't a personal example. I'm just talking about an example. Let's say if I have my house and I don't want my parents to come over every single day. Okay, but my parents love me. The place they're coming from is love, or my in-laws, or whatever. Let's just talk about it from a problem that people face. And they're coming from a place of love, but you feel that you want your personal space. You've communicated to them that you're a 40-year-old woman and you don't want them to come over every single day and drop you food, and that you can cook for yourself and you can clean for yourself, whatever it is. But they're seeing it as rejection. But you've communicated to them, you've said to them, look, I understand you're doing it out of love. I just want my own independence. How do you manage that? Because a lot of people in that situation that are transitioning from one way of working with their parents, I say way of working, God, one relationship, it's not a corporate job, but one way of life, I guess, that they've had for so many years, and they haven't set a boundary, to now setting a boundary and it's still not being met. They're going to face guilt. Yeah. And I face that a lot through my life, but not with that example, but with other ones.
It is. I'm smiling when you're talking there, because I hear a lot of people ask a very similar thing, and I wonder if it's a generational thing, where there is a generation where they feel that I'm going to go just drop you food and that's okay, and you're there thinking, well, I just want my space. I don't want you to come around. I want to be in my PJs. I want to just chill out. I don't need food. I want to make my own food. And it's like, how do you then navigate that and navigate your guilt? So if you've said no to them, and then you feel like, oh, but I feel really bad because they do love me. They do.
Yes.
And then what you end up doing is you open the door again. So they learn, oh, okay, it's fine. Like I'll come back and I'll open the door. But you've done it out of guilt. Yes. And the guilt is saying, I'm a bad person.
Yes.
I'm a bad person because I haven't let them come over and drop me the food. And actually they're doing it out of love. So you've just convinced yourself you're a bad person.
This is me.
So
not the food example, by the way, because I don't live out. But this is me in so many different avenues, because I'm thinking, I always think about intention, and you'll see if you listen to my podcast, I speak a lot about intention. And if the intention of someone is pure, I see myself as difficult, or I see myself as someone who, is being, I don't know exactly what you're saying in terms of I'm a bad person because they're doing something out of love and I'm rejecting it. But it's then difficult to break away from anyone. It's difficult to feel that independence.
Because I'm trying to think of, like, say, for example, if your friend has said, look, let's go out for dinner, and you've said no to her because you're busy or you just want to chill out that day.
Yeah.
Would you feel bad in a situation like that? Okay. So in a situation like that, you then end up going, but then when you're going, you can end up feeling resentful or feeling frustrated, because then you have to, you're going to come home, and are you fully available in that situation? Or are you thinking you're there, and then she's talking about a situation that's going on in her life, and you're sitting there thinking, oh God, I need to do this, I need to do this. So are you fully engaged there?
No.
Are you fully available?
Present. Yeah.
And this is about you looking after yourself and looking after what your needs are. And of course you care about your parents, your in-laws, you care about your family, and you want to make sure that they're happy. But it's also identifying what are your needs, what's important in your life. And you want to find that right balance, and also explaining to your parents, your family, that this is what's going on for me, this is what I need. And they may find it initially, they may find, oh, and you may see that, oh, and think, they don't like me, they don't love me, they think I'm a bad person, they think that they're only doing it out of love. And can you see again, we're running off with our own thoughts.
Yeah.
And how then do we step back and regulate the guilt? And it's difficult, but the more you do it, the stronger you become, the more grounded you become within yourself. And it's about you feeling that I am not a bad person.
Yeah.
I've said no because I need this time out. I need to be able to look after myself. And I know actually if I do take this, I'm going to feel annoyed. I'm going to feel frustrated. And I'm just going to keep ending up in the same cycle. So it's having a little quiet word with yourself.
And also, you know, we've talked about guilt, but there's also this element that's so tied in with setting boundaries, and it's feeling selfish.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel selfish because, like you've just said, it's about taking time for you. What do you want? How do you manage that?
Again, this is this is a really powerful topic because ultimately we're all navigating life, but we navigate from the relationship that we hold with ourselves. So if I feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like I'm not worthy, I will behave in that way in the world around me. So if, for example, I want to use the word self-love, but I think a lot of people switch off when they hear the word self-love because they think, oh God, here we go again. But self-love is about the relationship that you hold with yourself. So when you're, say if you're dating, say if you're with your partner, or if you're with your family, you develop a relationship where you love them for who they are, you appreciate all aspects of them. There's going to be times where you're annoyed with them and you still love them. But do you do the same with yourself? And if not, it's being able to identify, if you don't, how do you develop that? How do you develop a better relationship with self? And is that also communicating and regulating your emotions more, not trying to get rid of them, not trying to remove them, but really just stepping into the space of, if I really struggle to put myself first, why is that? So when you start going backwards in life and start going back into, and I know it's a typical sort of stigma of here goes a psychologist talking about childhood, but it goes back into how did you learn to, or how are you conditioned in the world around you? Are you someone who learned that as a female or as a child, you always had to put everyone else first. And again, you've become sensitive to that. So as soon as you see someone who is upset or someone who's annoyed or someone who's angry, you learn now that, oh my God, they're angry. I'll just do it, because you struggle with putting yourself first because you've never been able to do it. So it's like learning a new language, putting yourself first. It's like, but I feel the guilt, I feel bad, I feel like this, I feel like, and it's being gentle with yourself, being compassionate with yourself, and really sitting with yourself to understand, okay, if I feel guilt, let me try and talk to my guilt. So see your guilt as a little character. Like Inside Out, I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I love that movie.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And seeing your little character.
I love it. It's so good because, it shows different parts of our emotions and how they're tackling each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all have different voices within our heads. You know, we all have one voice that's telling us to go for it, be amazing, you're going to do great. And the other voice is holding us back.
So which one are you going to listen to, and why? What's your intention? And why are you going to choose to listen to this? Why is that important? And if it's something stopping you, it's your emotions. Your emotions are the glue to how you see the world around you. So if you're feeling fearful, that's how you're going to see the world around you. If you're feeling angry, that's how you're going to see the world. That's how you're going to keep interpreting things around you. If you're feeling shame, guilt, embarrassment, that's how you're going to keep seeing. If you're coming from a place of I'm not good enough, that's how you're going to see. So I'm got into a coffee shop, I'm in a queue, someone's gone in front of me, I'm like, oh, okay, they didn't see me, I'm not good at, I don't have the voice to speak out. And that's, again, a common thing is when you put your needs first, sometimes it's you've never used your voice, you've never been able to voice out. So when you may feel that, but I've said to my friend, I didn't like that, but she's still doing it. You may have said it quietly, you may have said it, and it's like, but it's a big deal for you. It's a big deal that you've just said, I don't like it when you say that, but they've continued to do it. And it's like, yeah, but see, they don't respect me. They don't get, and it's like, how are we using our voice and really expressing ourselves and getting stronger and stronger within ourselves, and not just thinking they didn't listen to me. That means, see, I'm not good enough. They don't care. It's like, no, how do I enforce? And it's about the self-love, the self-respect that you have for yourself. And it's a journey. It's not that by tomorrow, now that I understand and I've got this awareness, I'm going to do this. It's like every day there's going to be things in the world around you that bring up things for you. I don't want to use the word trigger. It brings things up for you. So when you feel things, notice them, and you've got a toolbox, you go delve into your toolbox, you start understanding, okay, let me make sense of like reflection, journaling, talking to a friend, therapy, whatever it might be in your toolbox. Really understand what's going on. What is this bringing up for me? So you're in tune with your inner world versus the external world. The external world is bringing things up for your internal world. And then in the internal world, you're making sense of it to then communicate back into the external world.
So true. I mean, affirmations are such a key part of my life.
Yeah.
And, you have to reflect first, understand where you are, and then you reset the affirmations. And that is when I designed a performance planner. It wasn't just about your performance at work. It's about your performance in your mind, because it all encapsulates your overall performance. And that's why both of those things are in there for me to know every single day. So when I want to rewire a thought I'm having, I know I've got space to write down affirmations. But you just said something which I want to ask you about.
Okay, go for it.
You said you don't use the word trigger.
Yeah.
Why?
I think when we use the word trigger, from my experience, people will see it as negative. They see it as like, oh my God, I'm triggered. There's something wrong with me. And it's like, no, we all have feelings that we feel. We all notice things that come up for us. So for me, I'm just trying to change the way that we see our feelings and notice our feelings. And I know that there's a lot out there. There's so much on social media and things like that. And it's trying to understand what is coming up within you. It's not a bad thing. Emotions are not bad. And often it's the relationship that we hold with ourselves and ultimately with our emotions, our thoughts. But
it's also the people that have told you that your whole life. Everyone has always told me I'm too sensitive. And I'm like, maybe you're not sensitive enough. But people have always told me for so long, you take things personally. And I used to as a child, but that's because I have always been quite empathetic. And so when someone would feel upset, I would feel really bad. And then I would hold that with me. And when I started this podcast, I remember someone saying, how do you cope? Because you are someone who would if someone tells me something really bad, and I've had really tough conversations on this podcast, sometimes for a few days I feel really upset and I think, oh my gosh. And I've had to learn to manage those emotions. But there are a lot of people who will say, well, I'm too sensitive, so I should just hide my emotions.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who says that to you?
As a therapist, the number one thing that I hear constantly is people struggling because of what other people have told them. Yes. Because of what other people have said to them. So other people have said, you're too sensitive, you're too much, you're this, you're this, you're this. And again, as a child, all you want is love. All you're seeking is that safety, that security. So you will do anything to try and fit in, to try and be what you feel is good or is okay for you to then receive that love, whatever or however that love comes about, if that's pieces, if that's unconditional, however it might be. But ultimately, you then develop a sense of self that is created by what you think you need to be in the world. So then you feel, I'm too sensitive, but as you progress through life, you're disconnected. You're disconnected from who you truly are. And to become more authentic, it's you stepping into that sensitivity.
Yes.
So I know that even when I've gone into therapy and I've spoken about myself, for a long time, I could not admit that I'm sensitive. I found it difficult because I was like, but it's so negative. I don't want to be sensitive. And then the more I've delved into myself, the more I've gone into myself, I'm like, you know what? I embrace my sensitivity. So just like you now, when you said, when people have said to you, oh yeah, well, you're not sensitive enough. Now we have the ability to say that, but as a child you didn't. As a child you did not understand that. So you were sensitive. You're connected to the world. You may be seeing and perceiving the world very differently to how other people are, and they don't know that. They don't understand that. So they've said to you, look, just stop crying, because you may be crying at a very inappropriate time where you're out and about, and mom and dad just like, look, stop crying. But it's the way, again, we've interpreted it, the way we perceived it. So when we do inner child work and we go back into the beliefs of the child self, it really helps you to identify your child version of how you've perceived and the views and the values that you now hold and the beliefs you have of the world, others, and of yourself, versus where you are now, where you're like, no, actually, I am sensitive and there's nothing wrong with that. And owning that. So when you're in situations, things that, when I say things might be sort of like bringing themselves up, is that from your child self where you've now said to me, oh, Lalitaa, you keep talking, can you just stop? And instantly my inner child is like, you're too much, you're a bad person. And then my adult self is like, no, Lalitaa, you're allowed to talk. You haven't said anything wrong. Shivani's just saying this because of this. So it's like that self-talk you're having with the version of you inside of you and what's being brought up.
This is like a free therapy session for both of us, isn't it? It's like a live therapy session.
We should do that.
Maybe not. But something that you've just said, I remember happened for me in therapy as well. So I remember speaking to my therapist around rejection and self-love. And you're right, because I remember saying to him, I never feel rejected. I've never felt rejection. What are you talking about? And he said, well, and I can't remember how it came up. And I remember telling him about a time where I always feel like, should I share this on like live podcast, but I'm going to. I remember a time I was sleeping on my grandma, and I was really, really close to my nanny, which is my mum's mum. And I remember I was sleeping on her once, and she had her arm around me, so I was sleeping on her chest. And she said, "My arm's hurting. Can you sleep on the pillow?" And I remember feeling so upset.
Oh, yeah.
Like feeling so upset. But my nanny was very weak. She was always in and out of hospital. And, you know, when she passed away, it was really, really hard for me. And I remember her doing that. And I remember bringing it up for some reason in therapy. And I said, yeah, but that didn't affect me. And he said, how old were you when that happened? I said, I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe like 6, 7. And he was like, so you're 26 now, or 25, however I was. And he was like, and you're bringing something up from 20 years ago and you're telling me it's not affecting you. And I remember thinking, oh, you're so right. Like I remember that moment as so crystal clear. I remember feeling rejected in that moment.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was manifesting itself into my life. So when someone, if I like would hug someone, or I would like hold someone and they rejected me, I would feel that emotion. So now I'm not really that affectionate with my friends, or, you know, I am in a relationship, I would say, but, you know, one of my friends, she's really, really affectionate, and I'm not, and I always say to her, well, I'm just not affectionate like that. And that helped me actually understand that maybe it's because I've trained myself to think I'm fearful of it. Like,
But
maybe
also, are
I've
you keeping yourself in this safe
Yes,
space because
maybe.
you felt that feeling? It
Yeah.
wasn't a nice feeling, and as a result, you're like, right, okay, if I don't hug people, if I'm not affectionate,
Exactly.
if I'm none of these,
it will never
things,
happen to me.
It will never happen.
It's so true. But I mean, I don't think that is something that really affects me. Does that make sense? But it's interesting to see how that was affecting my relationship at the time, because my relationship, if I wasn't affectionate in that, then I really felt it.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful actually to note back the times in your life where you did feel upset and you did feel an emotion, because often you can say, well, that happened years ago and that it didn't mean anything. But it actually does manifest itself into your life. And, you know, as you're speaking to me and you're talking around coping and dealing with these things, it reminds me of when you talk around high functioning anxiety. For people who don't know what that is, what is high functioning anxiety?
So high functioning anxiety, and a lot of people relate to this. So many people that I speak to, they're like, you've just, do you follow me? Do you watch what I'm doing? So high functioning anxiety is behind the scenes, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling worried, you're feeling stressed. There is an anxiety there behind the scenes, but you don't show that, you don't present that. And instead you use your anxiety and the things that you're feeling to then feel or to present as being organized, hardworking, and people see you as being successful, and they think that you've got it all together because actually you're presenting that.
Yeah.
So say, for example, let's think of an example, you're at work and your boss has just said, look, we've got this work to do and there's a presentation to do for next week. This is what we need to do. So in the back of your head, you're like, oh my God, I'm not organized. You feel out of control. You feel like you don't have everything together. You haven't got this. And you're thinking, what if? No one sees that. So, you know, like the image that I get is like, you know, the duck where it's like swimming and we just see it gliding like this. And underneath it's like, it's like paddling away. It's very similar to that, where behind the scenes, no one sees what's going on. So people see that you're organized. Oh, she'll get it done. She's always got it together. She's like this. But no one sees the real anxiety that you're going through, or the things that are happening where you are stressed out, you're overwhelmed, you're not sleeping all night. And a lot of people will say, this is how I present. And I wonder if it's that, again, that disconnection. So behind the scenes, you're feeling these feelings, but you feel and you worry and you feel like people aren't going to accept that. People don't understand that. People don't like that. So I'm not going to share that side. So that side is going on behind the scenes. And instead you show a side that you think people are going to accept. And you've learned that. You've learned that through life. So you've learned that through childhood. You've learned this is the way I need to be. And you've disconnected from the feelings that you're actually feeling because you worry about how then you're going to show up in life.
But let's talk about that in a work scenario. What's the difference between that and just being stressed and professional? Because if your boss asks you to do something, let's say last minute, which happens a lot of the time, right? And that is part of life, that is part of work. And he says, okay, look, can you just do this, please? You are going to be stressed, so you are going to feel nervous, you are going to feel scatty, and you're not going to say to him, sorry, I had dinner with my friend booked tonight, or I wanted to watch something, so Emily in Paris is released tonight, so I can't do it because I don't want to be stressed out. What's the difference between high functioning anxiety and then being professional and not, you know, I say professional. What people define as professional is not, you know, declaring that you haven't got it together. What's the difference between that?
It's a way of being. So with high functioning anxiety, it's a way of being. You're like that all the time. So you're not just like that in situations where there is heightened stress.
Okay.
So when something like that does happen, it might just feel like there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more what ifs. There's a lot more overthinking. But that's the way that you are constantly. So you're out with your friends. It's meant to be a good occasion. It's meant to be a fun occasion. And you're thinking, oh my God, look at that. What's this? What's this? Do I have this? And what am I going to wear? What's this? So there's so much going on all the time. Your brain is always stimulated. There's always things that you're overthinking, that you're worrying. You feel like things need to be perfect constantly. You need to feel in control all the time. So it's a way of life. So when we talk about stress, yes, there's always going to be things that come up in life where we do have bad days, we do feel stressed. But with high functioning anxiety, it's a way of being that you can step out of. But it's about understanding why you present in that way initially, to then break down what's gone on and what's happened and why have I learned to be this way in life, that I'm functioning. People feel that I'm functioning. People see that I'm successful. I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. But that's not who I really am. I'm all of these other things that are going on, but I don't want to share these. I feel shame. I feel embarrassed. I feel what people are going to think about me. So I have to keep presenting as being this, being this. So it's a real way of being.
And it's when you're not really authentic, right? And saying that you're stressed or you've got loads of things going on. Is that correct?
Yeah, and struggling to speak out that, look, actually, I have these thoughts, so I am anxious, so I am worried, because you worry about then how people are going to perceive you and how people are going to judge you as a result of that. So if someone was to say that, oh, you don't have it together, like you're struggling, you're like this, what's that going to do for you? And when you really step into the high functioning anxiety and making sense of it, you're just like, oh yeah, actually, it's not a big deal. It's not like, but because you're so used and ingrained within you that this is the way that you present, this is the way that you are, this is the way that your brain works, you don't think that there's another way. So I put up a post around high functioning anxiety, and the amount of people that responded back to me and said, I relate. I didn't know that other people were like this. I didn't think that this was a different, I thought there was something wrong with me, and I thought that there was something that was going on and I was different. And I was like, this is such a big thing that people are going through and people are experiencing. And it is different to having a diagnosis of anxiety where you aren't able to do day-to-day things because you may be having panic attacks, you may be feeling anxious. Whereas with high functioning anxiety, it's like that middle ground that's not really, you can't define it as like, yep, okay, you have a diagnosis, this is what you need, this is what happens. But it's like a very gray area, and people stay in this area. Yes, you can end up going down this, but actually there's tools to prevent you from ending up going down feeling or having the diagnosis of anxiety as well, where it severely impacts on your day-to-day functioning.
And what are some of those tools?
Self-reflection, journaling. So you've got your performance journal, and if in there you just step in and ask yourself, okay, what was something that was difficult today? What was something that was hard today for me? But don't just focus on the negatives. Don't just focus on the hard things that have happened. Also focus on the joy. Focus on what was something good today? Where was it something that I felt peace? Where was something that I felt happy? What was it that brings me this? So you're really setting up your life to do the things that you want to do. So if your friends are going out for example, drinks, and you're not feeling it, and you'd rather wake up in the morning and go for a hike somewhere, do that. Listen to yourself, not worrying, oh no, but if I don't go there, what are they going to think? Will they want me there next time? Will they ask me there? So there's all these different things to think about.
I'm sure you've just spiked up my sales in my performance planner, because I have what would make today great.
That's what
a mood tracker, affirmations, gratitude, a habit tracker, and then what are you proud of? And I put what are you proud of every single day in the performance planner, because it's self-love. Every single day you're telling yourself you're proud of something. What went well today and what could be better tomorrow. So if you haven't just hiked up my sales, and but you know, self-love, I've just touched on it now. And before we close, I think when people are going through a bad day, the first person they blame is themselves. You know, the first thing that comes up is their limiting belief. What's one tip that you would give to people if they're having a really bad day and they cannot get out of a rut?
So if you are having a really difficult day where there's so many things that are going on and on and on, and you're feeling like just overwhelmed with it all, step back and also do one thing at a time. Don't start thinking about, oh, I've got this tomorrow and I've got this the next day and I've got this and next week I've got to do this and next year I've got to do this, because your brain will start to then feel really overwhelmed, and it's like, I'm never going to do anything, and you just end up going down the rabbit hole. And it's like, right, how do I prevent myself from going down that rabbit hole? And it's like, just do one thing. Just do one thing today. Even if that's making sure that you have enough water that day. Even if it's just something that, you know what, I'm going to make sure that I'm just eating today. Just do one thing for yourself. And then once you've gone to sleep, once you've woken up the next day, it's like, right, your brain might be clearer. And if it's not, again, one thing. That's what you're doing. Just take one step at a time rather than jumping and thinking, oh my God, look at what I've got to achieve in life. There's too much there. Because otherwise you're just seeing like a bird's eye view and it's just too much going on. There's too much happening. You're going to feel overwhelmed. So step back and do one thing for yourself.
And what could some of those things be for someone every day?
So that's like just making sure that, okay, if I need to check my emails, do I do that? Okay. If you're not working and it's like, okay, do I need to just cook myself a good meal tonight?
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. But you're not putting pressure on yourself thinking, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. Because you're sensitive, you're vulnerable in that space. Everything just feels like it's going bad. You're thinking, what is the point? What is the point? But it's also self-care. And it's making sure that if it was your friend and your friend was having a bad day, what would you do to your friend? How would you speak to your friend? Would you say, yeah, you know what? Your life's crap. This is what it is. I don't think you should carry on.
Yeah.
Look at what you got. You wouldn't do that. How do you speak to your friend? It's also then the relationship coming back to yourself. And I think the biggest thing that I learned through my therapy journey is that no matter what happens, it's like you're a tree, you're grounded. And no matter what happens, what the weather is, you're still grounded. You have your roots connected. And it's about trusting yourself, trusting no matter what happens, no matter what the weather is, you will be okay. And if you trust yourself and know that things will be okay, and you can trust that no matter what happens, what the emotions are, what comes up, I will get through this. It's such a powerful way of living because there's always going to be chaos, be snow, rain, sleet, whatever it is. But you know you're rooted, you know what life is, and that's what you're controlling is what's going on within. You can't control anything else, and things will always happen, things will always come up. But it's not having control over, but my plan was to go to A to B. Why has it gone from A to Z? I didn't want that. Because you're fighting with life, you're fighting with the experiences. And I get that you have a plan. I want to go from A to B. You've connected with that plan. You now have feelings connected to that plan. And it feels like, this is so exciting. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then it's like, bang. And you're like, I'm not going to have that. And then feelings that you were once connected with, they've all gone. And now you're feeling disappointment, sadness, frustration. Why does this always happen to me? But it's again, the relationship that you have with yourself. And the more you develop that, the more that you grow, the more that you develop self-compassion, the better able you are to manage the chaos that keeps coming around you.
So true. And that's where knowing yourself is the most important, because the person you're going to spend the longest with for the rest of your life is going to be you. So working on that relationship, diving deeper, uncovering those moments where you're feeling vulnerable. And being vulnerable is really powerful in itself. And, I really appreciate you coming here today. And,
Thank you.
I feel like we've had a bit of a live therapy session, if I'm completely honest, and we've uncovered a few things. And I hope that for people listening at home, that they've actually uncovered a few things by listening to this. But where can people find you if they want to have a session with you?
So I'm on Instagram. Instagram is the main place.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone, and thank you so much for listening and watching this podcast. Wherever you're listening or watching, if you could please press the follow, like, and subscribe button, it would really mean the world to me.